And this should be it. Great. Hi again. Thanks for the introduction. As Andrew said, I'm Michael Pantelides, and I work for DG Connect on broader digital policy, and more recently with a focus on the complementarity between the digital and green transitions. Today, I will present to you on our work on the Circular Electronics Initiative. But first, I would like to present my co-speakers today and distinguished guests. It's Stefan Arditi, who is Director of Policy Integration and Circular Economy at the European Environmental Bureau, which is Europe's largest network of environmental citizens organizations. We have Pascal Leroy, who is Director General at the WE Forum, which is a not-for-profit association of 43 WE producer responsibility organizations. And we have Carsten Waldeck, who is the founder and CEO of ShiftPhone. Before passing the floor to you, I will make a short presentation on the CEI. As some of you listening in today may know, the topic of e-waste is a particularly current and relevant one. So electronic devices, in particular portable ICT devices, things like smartphones, tablets, and laptops, are part of virtually all aspects of our lives. So from education, work, commerce, and leisure. And the number of these devices is constantly growing. So we had 1.3 billion smartphones shipped in 2020 alone. Now, having these devices everywhere has, of course, brought many, many benefits and opportunities, not least in time of the pandemic. But the waste that they generate has become an obstacle to our efforts in the EU to reduce our environmental footprint. And you should know that Europe produces the most e-waste per capita worldwide at 16.2 kilograms per person per year. And this is growing at a rate of 3 to 5% a year. To make this even worse, less than 40% of all e-waste in the EU is recycled, and the rest remains unsorted. In 2018, for example, we had a recycling rate of 38.5 in the EU 27. And of course, the rate varies from member state to member state. So Eurostat has figures for 2018, where Croatia recycled 89.8% of its e-waste, and Denmark 67.5%, whereas on the lower end, we had France at 34.2% and Greece at 35.8%. So another problem lies in the lost value of the raw materials in these devices, which is estimated to be approximately 13 billion euro a year. So the sort of materials we're talking about are gold, tungsten, gallium, tantalum, and silicon metals, all of which are very important for our economy and on which the EU relies heavily on for imports, so between 75 and 100%. Portable ICT devices are of particular concern due to the, as I mentioned, the sheer quantity of them, the growth, the material composition, in that they contain things like hazardous materials that are a significant form of pollution, and their high emission production methods. The full life cycle of Europe's smartphones is responsible for 14 million tons of emissions each year. Of course, most arise in production itself. And there is evidence that shows that extending the lifetime of all smartphones in the EU by 1 year would save 2.1 million tons of carbon dioxide per year by 2030, the equivalent of taking over 1 million cars off the streets. So beyond this very, very poignant environmental problem, at the same time, we also see some benefits in that we would be able to, that there is much opportunity yet to grow the local aftermarkets for repair. In particular, for example, in promoting independent repairs and spare parts manufacturing. An example we can take is from the automotive industry, where enabling independent automotive aftermarkets created a 256 billion euro per year industry in the EU alone, and employs more than 4.3 million people. So regards to e-waste, well, or electronic devices that are used, one study shows that with 63 jobs needed per 1,000 tons that are treated, the development of the e-waste refurbishment could create up to 55,000 new jobs in Europe alone. So I will swiftly move on to present a bit on the policy context of the CEI. So the Circular Electronics Initiative was announced in the Commission's digital strategy last year in February. The strategy says that the CEI should aim to ensure that devices are designed for durability, maintenance, dismantling, reuse, and recycling. And importantly, it includes a right to repair to extend the lifetime of these electronic devices and to avoid premature obsolescence. Now, this is something that's been that has been called upon by consumer organizations and by the wider public in general. In particular, I'm referring to the most recent Eurobarometer, which indicates that the majority of Europeans would like to use their phone for at least 5 years. And I believe it's around 8 out of 10 Europeans think that manufacturers should be required to make it easier to repair digital devices or replace their individual parts. In this context, we also have the Circular Economy Action Plan from March last year, which highlighted the significant value that is lost when products are that are still mostly functional or at least partially functional are disposed of, either because they can't be repaired, battery can't be replaced, or the software is no longer supported. We've also received countless calls from the European Parliament and the European Council, notably by the Parliament last year in November, which adopted a resolution with particular emphasis on a right to repair to make repairs more appealing and systematic and cost efficient. So after this description, you might be wondering what deliverables we have planned in the EU. Well, we are currently working on a communication as envisaged in the Commission work programme for this year, which should be adopted before the end of the year. It will outline our approach basically to circular electronics and the intended actions behind this approach to boost circularity in the sector. So when it comes to defining the objectives of the Circular Electronics Initiative, I would refer back to the issues that I raised before. So the need to reduce e-waste, to keep rare earths and valuable materials in the EU, to create economic opportunities where they exist, and to offer consumers better and more sustainable choices. We also see that certain member states have already started to take some actions on their own, be it to fight back against early obsolescence or to incentivize repairability. And so we want to ensure that basically a harmonized approach exists that supports and enables the single market. As the name suggests, we take a life cycle approach because we're talking about circularity in electronics and ICT. And so we have broadly divided these up into upstream actions on the supply side and downstream actions on the demand side. To start with, I would principally highlight that an action that we anticipate to be a major part of the Circular Electronics Initiative is the upcoming eco-design measures for smartphones and tablets, which are currently planned for adoption next year. And measures for laptops at a later stage are anticipated. The Commission has completed an extensive preparatory study on eco-design measures of smartphones and tablets, and you can find the results online. And the preparatory study identified a number of areas for potential regulatory intervention. These include, for example, the need for a design for reliability, so making these devices resistant to accidental drops and scratch resistant and protection from dust and water. the ability for products to be disassembled and repaired where possible. So that would include a requirement on, for example, the availability of critical spare parts like batteries and other components for a period of 5 years, and the availability of operating system version upgrades, which would also be linked to a period of time. This would be complemented by the Commission proposal for a common charger and for the unbundling of the external power supply from the purchase of a new device, expected sometime this year. We will also publish a staff working document this summer, reviewing the effectiveness and efficiency of the directive on restrictions of hazardous substances, analyzing its coherence with other legislation, and really trying to find ways to strengthen our top-notch chemicals framework in Europe. And also importantly, now turning to the demand side, we are considering at the moment how to establish a right to repair for consumers, so that basically consumers can, in practice, access repair. This would also include, of course, software updates where software is the problem. This would be linked potentially to a reasonable period and a reasonable cost. We're still, we can't say much about the right to repair at this stage, but we have recently launched a study, the main purpose of which is to review the current repair landscape, explore the types of possibilities for right to repair there might be, and assess their economic and social benefits. And lastly, I would say that it would be to complete sort of the life cycle approach that we're trying to carve out here is take-back schemes. So we are in the process of finalizing an exploratory study with the aim of identifying potential measures to set up take-back schemes to return or sell back waste or old small electronic devices. And the idea here is that basically improving collection rates would boost reuse, repair, refurbishment, and recovery. So on that note, I think it's time to turn to our guest speakers. Thank you again in advance for speaking today. And I will pass the floor to Stéphane Arditi. Thanks a lot.
Great, thanks, Michael. I'm going to try to share my screen. Is it now? Sorry. Okay. Just tell me if it's working. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I could see your screen.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope it's okay also for the video recording. So first, hello and best regards to all. Really thank you to the European Commission and Connect University for inviting the EB today. The presentation I will make, and please at any time tell me if the slides are not clear or if it's not in presentation mode, is a bit provocative and a bit radical. I've decided to speak about how we can really design waste out and why we should really try to stop e-waste. So in a way, beyond minimizing, really designing out. Before we start in the contents, a brief introduction of EB. EB stands for European Environmental Bureau, which is a very official name, but we exist from 1974, and we've been created to accompany, influence, monitor the development of European environmental policy from the very beginning. We are a large network of organizations present in all 28 member states. Well, we should say 27, but I mean, we are also present in UK and beyond. And we work on different type of topics, one of them being circular economy. The presentation I will have today is a question about, is it worth the burden in terms of e-waste? Second, trying to provide a sort of vision toward what we call digital sufficiency. And then, because this is really what EEB is expert on, is about trying to identify policy leverage to start with in this journey. So first, is it worth the burden? So I think Michael has already explained that, notably for the EU, but it's a very continuous and global trend. And unfortunately, the projection till 2030 just confirmed that if we do not change our way of, I would say, producing and consuming digital device, we are going to increase and increase e-waste continuously. And this is really the fastest waste stream all over the world. And this is, of course, an issue we need to address. The point is that, and I know it's a bit wordy slide, so I'll be happy to share the slide, but this is the digital industry claim, and I took on purpose the example of climate. I mean, so if you see, this is a smarter 2030 project and website, so all information are available, provided in the context of United Nations work on, the possible benefits of digitalization. And they say that thanks to digitalization, we can really save on climate, and that their emission versus their potential savings is a factor 10. And on the left side of the screen for you, you will see that this can affect all, well, not all, but at least a wide range of sectors, from mobility, manufacturing, agriculture, building, and energy. And of course, when we see the digitalization and also e-waste, we have to kind of compare with the expected benefits. Thus, my question, is it worth the burden? And we think that there is clearly a blind spot in digital industry claim and in people promoting digitalization, is that they do not necessarily consider the life cycle footprint of digitalization. For example, in the previous slide, what I showed is they only consider the direct emission linked to their energy use, but they do not necessarily take into account what we call embedded emission during the extraction of raw material, the manufacturing, and the distribution and end-of-life stage. So here you see figures taken from a 2019 project called Green ICT, where there has been an estimate of the burden of the digital industry. And why do I call it a blind spot is that very often when we claim the advantages of digitalization, we think servers, switching, data exchange, but in fact the most important burden is linked to user equipment. So the smartphone, the laptop, the things we have. And if you see in the figures, it represents, in terms of greenhouse gas emission, about 2/3 of the total emission of the industry. And out of these 2/3, you see that the most important impact are linked to, the upstream stage of the life cycle before the use stage, when the use stage has been largely optimized and is kind of rather neglectable, at least when we speak about user equipment. But not only there is this kind of hidden carbon impact, but the same can be said for water and natural resources depletion. In fact, the picture is even bigger in terms of the responsibility of the manufacturing extraction stages compared to the use stages. And we think that if we want to have a fair picture, in fact, of the digitalization benefits, we need to consider the whole lifetime impact, so what we call life cycle footprinting, and not necessarily stick to only the energy use emission, which, as we see here, is not the most important life stage when it comes to environmental impact. Beyond this, and I don't want to insist too much today on this, is really we are aware, and I think Michael already introduced some of them, about other issues linked to digital devices and digitalization, social and environmental challenge in the IT product supply chain, hazardous substances, and also the fact that some of the minerals we need for the digital industry come from conflicting area. And I took this picture from the TCO certification website, because they also try to address this issue in their certification for sustainable smartphone, for example. The key point I want to come to, and justifying my question, is it worth the burden, is that unfortunately, until today, we have no clear evidence that the digital industry claims are actually happening. So we've got a lot of estimates. We are aware about the potential, but when we actually measure what happens in the market and in countries, in different territories, there is no obvious dematerialization or decarbonization. And I just mentioned two important studies about this. One is from the MIT, where they clearly said that they've scoped about 56 materials, and they said that from 2009 till today, there is absolutely no clear evidence of any dematerialization. And then I took another study made among others by the Lancaster University, and they said that there is also no clear evidence that the ICT net effect on global emission is positive. So I'm coming to my first conclusion, is that we need to stop e-waste. Just basically the point is that even if digitalization may contribute to increase sustainability at EU level and globally, and this is still to be demonstrated, it seems that there is absolutely no justification, and it does not worsen the burden when it comes to e-waste and resource wastage. And to illustrate this, I just use one of the sculpture that has been made during the G7 by a UK artist representing with e-waste some of the world leaders. So coming back now to the second point of my presentation is, what could that mean to work toward digital, at least material sufficiency? So this idea of really designing waste out of the digital system. So first, I refer to this because it's very striking that if you look at the document, notably of the European Commission, but not only, there is really a pressure to digitalize everything. If you've got a solution, it has to be digitalized. You mentioned industrial strategy. Digitalization will help energy-intensive industry. You speak circular economy, digitalization will help circular economy. You speak zero pollution, and I know that during this week we'll have session, digitalization will help zero pollution. You speak about SDGs, you've got plenty of reports showing how digitalization can help to achieve the SDGs. I do not say I contest the potential, but I find it a bit like easy just to refer to digitalize everything and the world will be saved. And I think, again, here, there are some blind spots that need to be considered. So the things I took from an author is this kind of digital challenge. If we digitalize our economy and our society, how can we make sure that there is an absolute decoupling from the environmental impact? So we are not speaking about, okay, the benefits of digitalization will in the future outpace the burden of digitalization. We are speaking about how digitalization can really help reduce absolutely the environmental impact and what are the evidence that we are walking in that direction. Another way to representing this is to say how digitalization can help us live within what we call the safe and just operating space. You know this donuts theory by Kate Raworth. The idea is that we need to find, the right balance between a decent life for all and not kind of overtaking the carrying capacity of the planet, or what we call the planet boundaries. And this is, for me, the key question. Is digitalization helping to operate within this safe and just operating space? I think a few years ago, in this same Connect University, you've been presented to a report by the Shift project called Lean ICT, where they were highlighting a few key takeaways. First, that the digital overconsumption is not sustainable today because of its need to energy and raw material. So exactly what I echoes with the blind spot on ICT footprint. The digital industry energy intensity is increasing, so we are not decreasing the energy usage, the energy consumption linked to our digital society. One thing which is very, very important for us, there is a highly polarized impact of ICT. That means that we in the global north, we kind of use much more resources and energy than in the global south. And the environmental impact of the digital transition to be a bit more sustainable need to be made sober. And they use the term sober. And among the recommendations, of course, they have the extending lifetime option, and also this idea of bring your own device, in your office, so that you do not multiply the number of user equipment. And the report stressed that the sobriety scenario is not sufficient to reduce the digital environmental footprint. It only prevents its explosion. So we are very far from the absolute decoupling that we should be aiming at with this. And I think this is where we have the challenge ahead of us. And that's why one thing we really need to stress is, can we really stop e-waste? And I don't pretend this is easy challenge, but I'd like to introduce now in the last part of my presentation some of the policy priorities which, according to me, can help with regard to this challenge. So the first one is really be serious about eco-design. I think Michael has introduced this, but according to us, we are not going far enough with what we do with eco-design. First, when we speak, we don't speak about the minimum lifetime for ICT. We say support by software update and firmware update, but is it, for example, scandalous to say we could keep our equipment, being a laptop or smartphone, for 10 years, not the 5 years that we are aiming at, but really 10 years. Is it scandalous to think that we could have the same machine for 10 years? It does not mean, of course, the same software, but it means the same hardware for 10 years. So you know, really like a new radical way of considering these very short life ICT devices. First, also second, sorry, reliability requirement. And this is very important about, you know, fall, wire tightness, possible scratch and things like that. Repair scoring system for all ICT devices, disassembly and replaceability for the consumer or by the consumer and also by independent repairers. For example, today, it's very striking that in the eco-design proposal, the only thing that the consumer could change is the batteries. And this is even challenged by the industry, for example. Parts availability and maintenance, repair instruction being made available online for at least the whole lifetime, but possibly beyond this. And some challenge here, I really don't know if it's feasible, and I'd like to hear the industry on this, is can we really think a radical modularity of devices, including, for example, for the motherboard of the CPU, which we know are so essential and are really adapted to the performance we require. Finally, making the data available, and I will come back to that when we discuss also product passport and the next slide. So here it's very important in that perspective of requiring data disclosure for the ICT devices, and starting, of course, with energy performance, but not only durability, repairability, carbon footprint, material footprint, water footprint, and maybe in the second stage in 5 years' time, something a bit more comprehensive on due diligence. Why is it so important? Because we've seen that this is where there is the burden. This is where we've got the real motivation to really stop e-waste, is because of this lifetime footprinting. One instrument that we use for years, but I think not necessarily at the right level, and here Pascal Leroy could also maybe elaborate, is really to adapt extended producer responsibility. I mean, at the moment, I've just taken this from a report we are preparing with Ecologic, you know, when on average, the cost of a mobile phone is about €373. The fee you pay for the extended producer responsibility is between €0.02 and €0.04. So something that is totally neglectable. You will not change any consumer habit, any even producer design with such a small fee. And this small fee is because we are not considering we should even collect all items we place on the market. We've got a target, which is 65% of what is placed on the market. And it's not even defined per category. So it's all, you know, the e-waste you generate. So that means that if you collect one washing machine, you know, in a way you can neglect a lot of smaller, lighter devices such as a smartphone. And it is clear that this fee does not reflect the overall environmental cost of each product. A thing also is that it's not modulated. So if you place a mobile phone on the market, you know, it can be with toxic, it can be hard to repair and recycle. You will pay approximately the same price as someone trying to place on the market something which is hazardous-free, easier to repair, and easier to recycle. So there is no modulation today in the extended producer responsibility, at least at your level, even if we are working on it. And then we do not necessarily have the reuse and remanufacturing objective. We've got mostly recycling objective, which is in fact creating an incentive to generate waste. Just as an example, we have to be aware that the way we monitor the target for the WE, so the waste of electric and electronic equipment, is by saying that 2/3, 65% of what has been placed on the market during the last 3 years should be collected. So you create with this kind of indicator a clear incentive to produce waste, when there is another methodology that is rarely implemented today because of its challenges to say, no, you need to collect 85 because we could not agree on 100% of the we you generate, but not you have to generate we. And I think this is extremely important that we fundamentally re-question the way we implement extended producer responsibility in Europe. I think one thing that is well identified but still not yet used is the power of sustainable procurement. Being for green public procurement that may be made mandatory for certain strategic sector, at least according to the Circular Economy Action Plan intention, but also I would say also the private procurement. For example, we've got a non-financial reporting directive today, and it is clear that we have absolutely no criteria on the procurement by companies that need to comply with this directive, where 15% of the market, the GDP, EU GDP, is represented by green public procurement, or by public procurement, sorry, that could be green by default. But can you imagine if we extend, this sustainable procurement also to private procurement? It's a much bigger size of the GDP of EU that is potentially unleashed in terms of potential. I would like to insist on this, that the recycling is really not the way out of digital e-waste. For technical reasons first, because if we consider the manufacturing of semiconductors, as far as I've understood, it's quite energy intensive. So the fact that we can recycle those does not offset, in fact, the manufacturing cost in terms of emission and environmental cost of manufacturing semiconductors. And the smelters, to recover these precious metals, being gold or being copper, being tungsten, being other type of rare earths, is also extremely energy intensive and water intensive. So unfortunately, the recycling of e-waste for its core components or for the critical material are not necessarily worth generating the waste, I would say. And of course, I think we need to ensure a proper collection and recycling, but it should only come after multiple life cycle and inner loops. And in that context, we can question if deposit-free food system could help. Finally, I would say there is a clear need to ban any e-waste export. E-waste are hazardous. According to our commitment to the International Basel Convention, we cannot export hazardous waste outside OECD, but even we should not delegate our burden to others. So we should deal with our e-waste. And one thing that we see growing is export for reuse. And this is linked to the fact that as we extend lifetime, as we increase repairability, we can expect that there would be an export for reuse. But there is here a clear problem, is that when we export for reuse, we do not export the fees we pay for a proper end-of-waste treatment. So basically, it's totally unfair. As consumer, as European citizen, when we buy something, we pay a fee, even if it's very small, as we've seen, to ensure a proper management of waste. But when we ship item for reuse, this fee does not follow. So in fact, we are shifting the burden to other countries which are less equipped than we are, and the small fee we had set aside to help for this waste management does not even reach them. A key question here is what we can expect from new business model. I refer to a report by Green Alliance in the UK, where they identify 6 models. But for us, the new business model should can deliver really if they work under strong condition of respecting eco-design. Because if you think, okay, if it's leasing, but each time you bring back your phone, you just replace it and you do not even bother to repair or to extend it or to remanufacture it, in fact, the new business model will not change. So new business model can only perform if they come, I would say, on top or enhance, the minimum eco-design and EPA policy. My final conclusion is we should maybe reverse the subordination today. And rather than say, well, digitalization will help for sustainability, so we subordinate sustainable plan to digitalization, we should rather, subordinate any digitalization plan to the sustainability. One iconic example is we're all aware that the resilient fund, the recovery plan at you, have a requirement of 20% digitalization. So the investment made should at least be 20% for digitalization. But if you screen those plans, there is absolutely no conditioning about what type of digitalization. There is no sustainability criteria attached to this. So we will validate the recovery plan if they invest 20% of the money into digitalization without, in fact, questioning the sustainability of this digitalization. And I think logic matters, and hopefully the two projects I mentioned here, one being organized by some people in this conference and DigiConnect on digitalization for sustainability, others are really questioning in that direction, and I invite you to consult those projects. Thank you very much for your attention, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks a lot, Stefan. Perhaps I would just, I see that we've received quite some interesting questions. Perhaps I could direct one or two of them to you now. Perhaps we can start off with how do we ensure that business, government, including the general public, really grasp that the impacts produced by this increasing consumerism with respect to digital devices. And in the second place, if you would have any ideas on ways to prevent planned obsolescence, which I know that the Commission has various actions planned in that respect, but perhaps your opinion would definitely actually be interesting. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Michael. As regard the first question, our government can really try to address the challenge of e-waste and the footprinting of digitalization along the lifetime. I think really they need to be supportive of the different policies that I've mentioned, notably eco-design, really be more demanding than what we have. And I can understand the concern of the industry, but we have to admit that this is extremely powerful, and it creates even a kind of worldwide benchmark by what we create here at EU level. And the evidence we have is that for all product covered today under eco-design, the business has benefited from the new eco-design rules. So I think the digital industry should not be scared of eco-design, and member states, of course, should not be scared of being extremely ambitious when it comes to eco-design. And we've got two major opportunities you've already mentioned, smartphone and computers. Let's really make example out of this iconic user equipment. But of course, also through a green public procurement. And very interestingly, we've been approached by, telecommunication agency from Belgium, but also from a EU network, saying, well, what could we say when we order infrastructure? Because if we think, we are going to shift to 5G, but unfortunately, do you know what's going to happen with your 4G smartphone? And it's not going to be a plug-in. It's going to be binned, wasted, potentially reused elsewhere, and hopefully with the EPR fees so that they can manage the waste. But basically, each time we are going to change, from 4G to 5G, we're going to generate a massive amount of waste. And then we are already speaking 6G, where I will be like, nearly present to you instead of being from remote. And we do not see that the industry is creating the possibility to preserve the hardware. So really, through the telecommunication agencies, through the infrastructure, the government can also act to try to apply 5G where it's really useful, avoid generating more waste, and asking some sustainability criteria. And when it comes to how we can fight, again, planned obsolescence, what we dislike with planned obsolescence is if it becomes a motto. We prefer sometimes to speak about premature obsolescence, because planned obsolescence means you intentionally try to reduce the lifetime of your product. And if that exists, this needs to be sanctioned. This is illegal, and in France already it's illegal. I think the European Commission is considering making it illegal. But I think most of the obsolescence is not necessarily intentional, it's just premature. It's just because the design of the product has not been optimized for repair or for longer lasting or for reliability. It's just because we are bombarded with advertising pretending that if we got the new smartphone, we're going to change and be happier, which is, I'm sorry, this is not proven at all. And a lot of people could be very happy to preserve their old devices, hardware, if through the software they could access the performance. Not everyone require every time the 5G. So in a way, there is a kind of pressure, advertising pressure, design sub-optimization that create a lot of the obsolescence that can be avoided. And again, here, we've got the possibility of setting eco-design requirement, setting through EPR some form of incentive for longevity and repairability, which are not addressed today.
Thanks a lot, Stefan. And indeed, regarding eco-design, I know that DG Grow has an ongoing consultation on potential measures for smartphones and tablets, and I know that they're encouraging the general public to respond. Okay, thanks very much, Stefan. Perhaps we can pass the floor to Pascal. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Michael. My presentation will be, let's say, following on the previous presentation. It's about accelerating the transition to a digital circular economy for end-of-life electronics. And actually, a number of the things that were said before, I will just repeat them, that the We Forum, which is a club of producer responsibility organizations worldwide, I will get to this in a minute, but our why is tackling the worldwide societal challenge of e-waste. It's really an issue of great concern and of growing concern, as we said, as we heard from the previous speakers, because the growth rate of e-waste is 3.3%. So every single year, there's 1.8 million tons extra e-waste, every single year. And there is no tipping point in sight. These are statistics from the Global E-Waste Monitor. There's United Nations University has acquired a lot of expertise in compiling the statistics on this matter. And so this is actually our starting point. And we as an organization, we really aspire to tackle the societal challenge. You will see that a number of topics in my presentation are similar to what we saw in the previous presentation from Stefan. So Mount Recycle More is part of the awareness raising that needs to happen to make sure that we get a hold of this issue. But of course, it's going to be incredibly difficult. But so before I dive into the issues of the presentation, very briefly, the We Forum at a glance. We are a worldwide organization. We used to be mainly European, but we have expanded to all the continents in the world. And we speak for 43 producer responsibility organizations on 5 continents. So the bread and butter, so to speak, of the members of the We Forum is to collect electronic waste from households and businesses and to manage proper recycling and processing. So secondly, we are representative on the industry of the entire sector of electrical and electronic equipment. So not just one section, but all of it, all the products with the plug or a battery. The tonnage is, we are the biggest organization of its kind worldwide. So the PROs and we forum collected 2.7 million tons last year, which is the equivalent of 270 Eiffel Towers. And since the early 2000s, that's 21 million tons. And what we aspire to do is really to become a competence center, the number one competence center, acquiring data, insights, intelligence about the sector, about, well, for example, the quantities of placed on the market, how much is collected, what is the return rate, materials are rising from the urban mine, stocks and flows, and so forth. And all this, of course, with a view to advancing the circular economy. So, and I also wanted to say that we strongly believe that, and actually Stefan mentioned it as well in his presentation, is that we need to update the vision on, or let's say the principle of extended producer responsibility, EPR. And one of the things we are saying is that if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. All flows and all actors in all the market must be monitored. This is really very critical. Before you design policies and programs, you need to know what's going on in your market specifically, because waste is shipped to poor countries, as we have seen, and there's a lot of waste disappearing, not being handled by the right people, sometimes by criminal gangs and so forth. But you need to know this before you can design your policies. Secondly, the all actors principle, that should also be part of the redesign of the EPR principle. All actors principle means that all the actors that have access to WE or eWaste and can influence the WE collection rate should be subject to minimum legal obligations. So EPR means extended producer responsibility, doesn't mean exclusive producer responsibility. What we have learned over the years, and actually we have 20-25 years of experience in Europe with EPR policy in the e-waste field, is that all the actors that have access to e-waste should be held responsible, should have certain legal obligations. This is actually a universal principle, regardless of your country is poor or rich. Those who have access to WE should have obligations. And then the third point, the third pillar of this redesign is that the principle that PROs are only legally accountable for the WE to which they have access should be enshrined in WE legislation. Of course, there's much more to this than that. And actually, if you want to find out more, you can download a copy of our report, an enhanced definition of EPR and the role of all actors from our website. And the statistics come from the United Nations themselves, with whom we have conducted that research. So without further ado, let me also present to you the nature and the scale of the problem. Fortunately, Michael and Stefan have already introduced you to the nature and the scale. So it was mentioned that by 2030, we will end up with 75 million tons of e-waste generated every single year. It's just a huge amount of e-waste. Secondly, 1 device out of 7 in our households is actually broken or no longer in use. If you come to think of it, it's an incredible amount of devices, and each device contains raw materials that no one can tap into. It is just sitting there in your house. And so if it contains the rare earth elements or critical raw materials, they are just untappable, so to speak. And so we have to make sure that people bring back their electronic devices. And the third point I wanted to talk about is that if you look at the different waste streams, the e-waste stream is actually one of the waste streams that contains most elements from the Mendeleev table. So, and from the critical raw materials section of that table, meaning that critical raw material is defined by the European Union as materials that because, for example, authoritarian regimes are sitting on that material. But also, it's not only design risk, sorry, a supply risk, but also there is they are very critical for our economy and for our high-tech lifestyle and for the green transition. Let's not forget that many of these elements, such as palladium and so on, are absolutely necessary for the green transition. So for green, for windmills and for e-mobility and so forth. And this is a picture that hasn't been presented before, and that is that there's a lot of e-waste disappearing. So the research we conducted with the United Nations is that only 55% of we in Europe, on average, of course, is reported as officially collected. And so 45% is either unknown or disappears in other flows. And so other flows could be, for example, it is binned, it's part of the waste bin. For example, your toothbrush, you just discard in your waste bin, or it is exported for reuse, or it is illegally shipped to poor countries, or it is part of the metal scrap. It's something that often happens, that the refrigerators are picked up by someone and ends up in a metal scrap flow. So, but all this is beyond our control and beyond the control of producers to a large extent. And so this is really quite typical for our sector. So where the we goes, only 55% is officially reported. And this is despite 25 years of experience, despite so many policies, programs. It's just extremely difficult to get people to return their e-waste and also to make sure that it enters the official channels. And one other dimension of the problem is what I would call the internet waste footprint. And actually, it was interesting to hear Stefan's figures. I was not aware of them. We conducted that research with International Telecommunication Union, ITU, which is a United Nations body. And we, as part of an awareness raising campaign, which is that you look at your smartphone and you think, okay, that's this will end up as e-waste at some point. But the thing is, there's a universe of problems that are not visible. Well, not problems, but logistics and equipment that make sure that you can actually make a phone call, that you can actually download data on your smartphone, on your laptop, on your desktop, and so forth. The connectivity, the 5G, and this has not been highlighted recently by anybody. And we want to draw attention to the fact that this should not be neglected. So we should all remain mindful that behind the visible consumer products that we have in our hands, that there is an invisible galaxy of things that make sure that it actually that the products work and function. And so from the figures that Stefan showed, he said, okay, it's mainly user equipment, but I added up networks and data centers, and that was 34% of the CO2 emissions. So it's not negligible. And I think we should remain mindful of all these, of this invisible aspect of the e-waste problem. And so we have a value chain that is not optimal, that is underperforming, so to speak, so that is not insufficiently transparent. We have insufficient knowledge about the material composition of products. We would expect that manufacturers know exactly what is sitting in the product, but that's not the case. For example, it's not known also where the minerals come from. So they may come from conflict areas, so from countries where there's war. Users often also struggle to comply with legislation because there may be issues that arise as time goes by. Also, consumers cannot take environmentally informed purchasing decisions, or they cannot monetize sustainable business practices. So there's no connection between manufacturers and consumers or customers. And also the user needs are insufficiently considered in sustainable product design. So it was mentioned that eco-design is an issue of great importance and so on. But if manufacturers had a direct connection with consumers on specific products, in a transparent kind of way, that would improve also the communication, and there would be an incentive to work towards better eco-design. So the value chain is can be improved a lot. So how do we accelerate the transition to circularity? And why traceability? How can digitalization usher in the circular economy? I think that's the key question, because I don't think we can stop digitalization, even if we wanted to. But the thing is that how can we make sure that the circular economy is digital and vice versa? That that the digital agenda is, let's say, a sustainable agenda. That's the key challenge, and it's actually Ilias Yacovidis who used to point out in conferences that we need to make sure that the two agendas marry. The digital agenda should marry with the sustainable agenda or the green agenda, and this was not the case before. So there were two separate silos in the European Commission. This has fortunately changed. So what's the case for digitalization? This was mentioned in the European Green Deal in 2019, that we should actually work towards a system that makes information available on the characteristics of products sold in the European Union. For example, an electronic product passport. I'm not going into details about electronic product passports. I am relatively agnostic as to how it should look like, but this is just to show that this is the direction that the European Union has decided to take, and the issue now is to, let's say, to put it into practice. And we as WeForum, as a club of producer responsibility organizations, we have looked into this, and we strongly believe that we need to work towards a circular product value chain. So meaning that if we get to this system, to this digitally enabled circular value chain, there would be advantages for every section in that value chain. So for manufacturers, it would be more comforting. It would be easier for them to comply with product legislation. They would be more easily engaged with customers and consumers. Retailers, exactly the same. They would also have better information about the product ecological footprint. Consumers would have more, better information about the products that they buy. For collection, we would know better where to ship the products to have a more optimal treatment and recycling, and so it goes on. So for raw materials, suppliers would also know where the materials are sourced, where the minerals come from. And the component suppliers as well, they would be able to comply with REACH legislation. So I think this goes to the essence of what we're trying to do. And what we specifically did a few years ago as WeForum, together with partners in the PROSUM project. PROSUM stands for Prospecting Secondary Raw Materials in the Urban Mine, is we built the world's first urban mine platform. So if ever you are asking yourself, what is the quantity of cobalt, for example, arising in the European market, aggregated, let's say, adding up batteries and other products, you could go to the urban mine platform. It's deliverable from the PROSUM project. And not just batteries, but also electronics and vehicles. And we have it at the level of elements, components, products, and waste flow. So that's one example. I'm not going into details on this. This was financed by the European Union, by the way. We have just launched together with our partners, but we are not running this project. We are not project leaders, but we are involved in a project called CircThread, which is basically implementing all these ideas through the digital threads. And the challenge is to build the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure, to make it happen. And the third example, a project that we are currently involved in, it's called C-Service, and is all about making circular economy business models. And so we are working towards creating a QR code that allows actors in the chain, could be customers, but it could also be, or consumers, could also be repair outfits and so on, to have access to private data from the supply chain, so that they can so that they will better know what to do with the products. And to close my presentation, what should be the EU's ambition? In my opinion, it should be to lead with the world in mind. So they should, aided by its digital agenda, the EU must aim to create a fully circular and resource-efficient electronic value chain and e-waste system based on an updated vision on extended producer responsibility principle, implementing the all actors approach by 2030, and become a global leader in using standards and digitalization to foster circularity, to improve waste prevention, collection, reuse, repair, recycling, and to foster reporting. And of course, we don't think that digitalization is the one-size-fits-all solution to all the problems in the e-waste sector. We fully acknowledge that there are many issues that need to be addressed and that cannot be addressed by digitalization. We need to be totally realistic in this. But in my opinion, the circular economy will be digital or will not be. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Pascal. I found that very interesting, and I think regarding the digital product passport, we'll know more from the European Commission later on this year with the Sustainable Products Initiative. Perhaps I could just direct one or two questions to you. So the first being, how could the circular economy be actually promoted at a global level? So of course, you know, we take actions in Europe on sustainability, but how can we really make this a global phenomenon? And the second question would be, would you happen to know anything about the monetary value of the rare earths and values in each electronic device? And potentially even anything about the extraction costs?
Yeah, so to answer the second question, so the value, I saw in your presentation, I think it was 13 billion euro per year, but I think it's more actually. Well, actually in Europe, that makes sense, yes, for Europe, 13 billion. But for the world, it's approximately 60 billion, if I'm not mistaken, between 50 and 60 billion euro per year. The value of the materials. And so that's an incredibly large value. To respond to your first question, which is how can we make the circular economy a global phenomenon? Well, one aspect of this is that I don't think we should prohibit, for example, the fact that products are reused and so in other countries, but we need to make sure that treatment standards, for example, are equivalent to those in the European Union. And that's part of the problem, of course, because it's very hard to demonstrate this. But there are good examples where products are handled and treated by complying with standards that are equivalent to the European Union. That's just one example.
Great, thanks a lot. I mean, perhaps I know that Stefan, you have some reactions to some of the other questions. Maybe we can come back to them towards the end if we have time, because I just want to pass over the floor to Carsten from Shift Phone, and I know there are already some interesting questions in the chat for you later on that. Hi, Carsten.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me really well. I'm going to also share my screen so I can show you some slides. There we go. Okay. You should be able to see the Shift logo now. Is that correct? Okay. So, yeah. I want to share a little bit. We've heard a lot about electronic waste, maybe some ideas, concepts, how to prevent electronic waste, and also how big this problem has become, and it's becoming bigger and bigger. So I would like to introduce our little company from Germany to you. We are right in the middle of Germany. My brother, Samuel, you can also see here on the picture, and you can see me with a hat. So we are leading this little company. We are the founders of that, and also our father is with us. It's like a little family business, if you want. And we are a little different maybe than the normal industry is thinking about those things. I don't know if maybe one or the other of you have heard about the Fairphone before. There is also another manufacturer from Holland or Netherlands building phones that are repairable. So maybe if you want, you can see us maybe as a little bit going in the same direction on that. So we don't see the Fairphone as our competitor. We see them as our, partner for fighting for the same goals, basically. Until now, we don't have a strong business relationship or so with them. We sometimes talk or share some things, but we are not working together 100%. We are hoping that this will change sometime soon. And also, we are a little different than Fairphone. So maybe if some of you know Fairphone, just keep that in mind. And I will also maybe talk a little bit about it. What is maybe the difference, so you can get a feeling for it. One thing is we live on the countryside. So we live right in the nature. We don't live in a big city. We love nature. And this is when we when we look out where we come from. So you can see the images. So maybe you can nod your head if you, yeah, okay, all right. This is our campus, the buildings that where we design and build shift phones, one part of it. And that's more green than anything built. And the buildings are very old oak tree and clay buildings, which are hundreds of years old, that we are also reusing and repairing all the time to be there. So we didn't build anything new here. Also, we're reusing things that are already there. The goal of the company is to do as much good as we can and to do as little damage as possible on the way as we go. And this is not just a easy said mission statement. This is our tool. This is our measurement where we measure things. So every decision we take, doesn't matter in what area, we use this tool, this measurement, to optimize for the decisions. And I will talk about this, what that means in practice, because, in theory, that's easy to say, but what does it really mean in practice? How do we really make this happen step by step in reality? So as you know, Shift, most of you might know, we are known for building smartphones, but we not only build smartphones, we also build other technologies, and also we have other areas of work, but mainly known we are for the smartphones. And so for us, it's very important in that area. We have talked about eWaste before, so where does it go when it's broken, or what happens with creation of eWaste, and also where it will go? How is this piece of technology being manufactured? How is it being made? How will people be treated on this way? And where do materials come from? How is the flow of materials? And has anybody been harmed in that process, and so on? Those are three very big fields where we at Shift do our work. And this is a German word that the ones who speak German will understand right away. And I put it here because there is no exact English translation for it. It is something between value, respect, appreciate, enjoy, and many more things combined in one word, basically. So I've never found a good English translation. So I also like to use this German word because it just fits all those values together in one package for us. And if we would, all the things we do, all the work we do, put into one word, it would be this German word Wertschätzung, which is totally on our hearts. We try to optimize this one thing to all areas. Sorry, maybe I have to drink a little bit. I will do. Here you can see our team. So as I'm recovering my voice, you can look from one to the other persons here. It has grown maybe almost to the double now. This was 1 or 2 years ago. And yeah, but we love the people who work in our team. We feel more like a family than a company in that regard. But not just our workers in Germany, also our little manufacturing site in China. And you might ask, why are we producing in China at all? This is because of CO2 emission reasons and also some other reasons, also reducing waste for packing and shipping and things like this. So we want to bring our products into the most compact form before we move it somewhere. And since a lot of components come from the Asian area, it doesn't make sense to ship or fly all the components to Germany first, assemble them here, and then ship them somewhere in the world. So we try to optimize everything according to our goals, and we found it is really good to have a place in Asia where we can compact things down and reduce a lot of volume and weight and shipment costs and CO2 emissions that way. Also, packing can be reduced and reused much more easily, because if, let's say, some cameras are coming, they would be coming on some trays, big trays on packing material. They will be coming to this manufacturing site, and they will be taken off this packing. And this packing will go back to the manufacturer right away. So we don't even need to ship them. The manufacturer will take them again right away for the next delivery, and no packing needs to be recycled or even thrown away. So there are a lot of reasons why that makes a lot of sense. But since we do that, we want the workers to have a very good life, and they earn almost the same than our German workers, which is a lot more, way more than is normal in China. And the way how they work and the manufacturing side looks like our office here in Germany. Actually, we try to make it for people in a way so they that it is some workspace where we also would like to work, actually, as maybe the bosses of the company. And so when we then ship the product, there is no plastic or anything anymore. It is completely recycled paper, everything inside. It comes with full protection, so the device has a bumper and a panzer glass already installed, pre-installed, because we found that good protection is already 70 to 80% of sustainability in regard to this product will live for a long time. So actually the protection is already designed in the product. You can't buy it without the protection, and it is being made in a very nice way, so you don't feel the protection at all. It feels even better with the protection on than off, because that's a big problem, we think, in nowadays products. They are very nice and shiny maybe, but then you put on your protector and then you have some ugly device that you really don't want to carry with you. And that's not really good in our eyes. The device is being designed by repair statistics. So everything about this device is optimized to repair statistics that we have collected over the years, which is, of course, most importantly, the maybe I can show that. It's maybe a little small because you see the slides, but this is my phone. I take off the protector, and here is one little thing. I take it off, and here's my phone. This is the battery. Batteries need to be accessible right away. Like, you should never glue in a battery or make it hard for people to change the battery, because the battery will decrease in capacity after, let's say, 2, 3, latest 4 years. And it is totally clear that this is going to happen. So this is not a good idea in our eyes to glue things in that regard. You should be able to extend memory. So all our devices have micro SD slots, so you can extend as much memory as you want, up to, I think nowadays makes sense to maybe have 1 terabyte of micro SD inside. But later also it is supporting more than that, but it doesn't make sense to buy that nowadays. So we also look to the future, so you can use those products for a very, very long time. And then there are just a few screws that you can remove. I will talk about this a little later, and you can see this here on the picture. And then you can see here the components the phone is being made of. This is the main components. It's more than 20 components. It's the most modular phone in the world right now. And the user can get every module themselves, so you don't need to go to a repair place if you don't want to. Of course, we can replay it for you in very short time, because repairs will only take a few seconds or minutes, longest, and then the thing is repaired. And by doing it like this, a lot of things change. The whole industry, the way how we can produce those things, how we can work together with our customers is totally different from the market right now. The other thing also we care a lot about is the materials, as I said in the beginning. So we really want to know what is on our boards and so on. Of course, we also buy components. So sometimes it's not totally clear what is inside the components. So we really look to that closely. This is a preparation for an NAA analysis, neutron activation analysis procedure, which we have done with universities together in Europe, to really know what materials are in our device. And we take this very seriously. And so we found, because we have been reducing, you've heard a lot about conflict materials, like there's coltan or tantal, which has been used for capacitors, for example. This we have been throwing out from the beginning, so we don't have that on our main board at all. There is a tiny little bit in the processors at some point of time. Some processors have that. And since we don't build processors ourselves yet, and we have to buy them, we can't remove that fully at the moment. But our analysis have found that it is less than €1 of worth in the whole lifetime of our company. So all devices we've ever sold, it's less than €1. So this is the flow of value of money that could have been going in some direction that we couldn't have controlled towards that. It's way less even than that, but just to give you an idea, when you really want to change things, there are a lot of possibilities that what you can do. So we are using ceramic capacitors, which can completely replace tantal or tantalum in that regard. Okay, maybe this is already a little detailed. I don't want to bore you with those details, so maybe I'll go a little faster. This is our supply chain. Just look it up in our, we have a report coming out regularly, and this is our Wirkungsbericht. As German, that's Wertschätzung. This is our supply chain, if you want. We don't like to call it supply chain because more and more we also think circular, and it's not just chains anymore. But here you can see our first 3 hierarchies of supply structure at the moment. So tier 3 is completely transparent with us, and we also share this. So you can have a look into this. If you look into a report, it is there, and also you can get more information about it. But also we want to look on the other side, like this is the one side of the supply chain. We can go 3 hierarchy steps deep now. We can also go way deeper, but not fully. So the 3 hierarchy steps is what we can publish right now and make it official. The other side is exactly from which mines do materials come from. And this is why we also look there. and see if we can establish direct contact there to work together in the Congo area, also other areas. We also want to support the Congo. It's very important to us. We don't want to ignore the Congo because they have a lot of resources and also they need help and support. But since a lot of things are very corrupt in the Congo area, it's easy for big companies to exploit, mines and workers and other things. So we want to stop that and change things here. We are working together with different organizations to do that. Maybe it's also a little too long if I go into this into detail. Please also find this in our report where you can find out about this. We are supporting also other things like trauma centers in the Congo area where people are being helped who have been with some rebel groups and have been working in mines before and could escape from that, and giving them a new life and things like that. We're working together with the BGR, this is the German institute of the government for Rohstoffe. So for getting materials and getting the overview here. And we have been working together with them and have found a good and great team there in Congo area in Bukavu. And we also have been going to the mines directly and also were there when the mines got certified. There are different kinds of certifications and we also monitor this and also support and help there. There's another thing that I want to mention, just maybe if you have not heard about it before, it is closingtheloop.eu. That is also another organization we work with. What we do here is, in addition to the other things that we do, and also maybe doing more good than we buy materials actually from the market, so more money goes into helping than buying the materials, is also buying old phones in Africa and recycle them to get the materials and getting more materials that way than we use for our phones. So that's also another way to do good things. And we do all those things at the same time, actually. And so maybe you wonder, how can you do that? Because also our product is also not very expensive. Actually, when you compare it with other companies' value, maybe we can talk about this a little later, it's not much more expensive. It's about the same price, even cheaper. Sometimes maybe half of an iPhone would cost with similar technologies. And we do that, so we have no profit distributions in our company. So no cent will ever go to any private person or investor group. We don't have investors, and we are completely free, and we can use all the money we have, all the profits we make on sustainability and social justice projects, and we really do that. So it's not just some goal, it is what we do every day, what we have done from the beginning of this company for 7 years now. All profits have been going into this area, and this is how we can do those things. Also, we don't have retailers, we just sell directly to people. There are many things we do different, so this is where we all don't need to waste the money on revenue streams and other things, so we can do more good by that. The other thing that we want to treat with respect is the customer. I already talked about that before, but just to make this a little bit, which is totally different from the market, is right to repair. You know, there's Fairphone, there's us, maybe there's some more that I'm not so aware of at the moment, but there are not many manufacturers in the world who allow to open the device without the warranty being void, because that's very important. Like, you can open a Shift phone and the warranty will still be there. Of course, you have some risk, because if you break components on your way, you might have to share the cost with us when we help you to but when you do it according to our and that's the next thing, video tutorials, so we explain how to do it, so you're not lost in, you know, the repairs. And of course, sometimes there's iFixit doing really good, nice repair tutorials. You could also have a look there, but we also provide them. Manufacturer is very nice video tutorials, how to do all the things. And then that makes it very easy for you. And actually not many people break things. So our experience is it works really well, and people know how to, you know, when they open the device with the screws, maybe I can talk about this here. So you don't need any tools to change battery. You don't need any tools to extend the memory and to change the SIM card. It must be totally tool-free and in a few seconds doable. That's what we think a good device should be designed to. And for the rest, when you have opened it, there are just a few screws, and this is on purpose. We don't have click connectors or other things. We have screws here. Why? We want people to watch the videos and see the repair instructions before they open the device and remove things. Because also we want to reduce materials. If we would make everything into extra housings inside, we would waste a lot of materials. We would be less efficient in CO2 emissions. We would have a lot of other disadvantages, and we would be not as compact and as high end. So we don't want that. So we want the people to be part of the whole thing and let them know about the device and being able to repair it, even though it is quite tiny and small and also very, very, very modular. So actually you only need one tool, like we have only one screw type, and it's not just the same tool, it's also the same length of the screw. So it's exactly the same product of screw because you don't need to care about where you took it out and where you put it in. Like just put all the screws on one pile and then just screw them in later in any hole you want, and you don't need to care for that. And that's also something really important we found, because in other repair instructions, people get mixed up with screws. They look very much the same, but they're a little bit longer, and then they are screwed into the main board, and that's it, and they have broken their device. That's horrible if things like this happen, so we don't want that to happen. All the components inside should be easy to change when they are easy to break. So according to repair statistics, what is more easy to break has to be repairable more easy. That is the battery, we know that. That is the screen, the next. You know, the big manufacturers sometimes say, oh, well, we want to glue down our products because, you know, then they are waterproof and they are, you know, much more durable. Well, there's a little bit truth to this, but only a little bit, because actually we have looked at our repair statistics. And do you know how much water damage we get? It is not very much. Most damage is screen, is ports, is other things, but it's not, you know, I've dropped my phone into the toilet. This actually is just a very, very little part. It's less than 2 or 3% of the repairs, actually. That's one thing. The other thing is also, of course, they should be durable and they should be built without any planned you know, what is the word? Obsolescence. We've talked about that before. It's really hard to say for me. Sorry. So of course we don't have that. We build products to live as long as possible somehow. But of course there are things like when you are able to open the device, and we would make them waterproof for the people to know. People would have to be very careful when they put them together. Like if there's like some little rubber part missing, people would think it's waterproof, but then they take it in the water and it's broken, and then a lot of things could be broken, and people would not be very happy. So we don't say it's waterproof, but we built it as good as possible, resistant to dust, and also dropping water, rainwater, and so on. And also, of course, we have a waterproof, we are right now developing a waterproof module. You can put your phone into this module and it's completely waterproof, and you can dive with it and whatever, and you know you do it. You don't need this, you know, like every day, actually, in our opinion. So we think it's way, way, way more important to be able to repair this thing. This is why I'm not very happy about the EU right now for the eco-design thinking. They don't put in the repairability score, but they only put in waterproof and things like this. It's important, it's good, but you know, repairability, it should be way more up high there, because We create so much electronic waste with waterproof things, actually. Okay, the other thing is return or upgrade. You can return or upgrade any Shift product anytime. And that's totally different. Like when you buy something, you own it, and we want you to own it. Why? Because if you would just, there are those concepts where you say, well, we don't want to own things anymore, we just use them. But what happens then? We found that responsibility in that regard drops a lot. Like people don't care anymore for things. Like I don't own it, I just use it. Well, so when it drops, well, it says dropped, I get a new one. Things like this are not very good for the planet, are not very good for yourself too, are not very good for, really taking care of things. And doesn't make a lot of sense. Like we know all those things with scooters, rental scooters being thrown in the rivers and things like that. It creates a lot of electronic waste. So better not do that. We found a better way to do it. Like you buy it, you own it, but we will guarantee you we buy it back from you anytime you want. So how about that? And then basically you own it for that time when you want to have it, but then we will own it again. And we will buy back everything. Like there's no product we will not buy back from you. And we don't just buy it back for some little rate, we buy it back for the real value of the device. Like you would get more from us than you would get on eBay or anywhere else. And this is because we can also find out what is the value of your device, how you have treated it. It is dependent on how you have cared for your device. If you treat it in a really nice way, you will get almost the full price back, even after some time. Okay, so that's a very important thing we found. Return or upgrade anytime. You can upgrade it into any other product from us or you get your money back. The other thing is when you don't treat it so well, or well, you've run over it with a car, it's totally broken, nothing works, it's only trash you return to us. Still, you will get 22 euros refund, minimum. Okay, so there's no sense in throwing away anything from Shift. Never throw away a Shift product. We want back every product. We will buy it back no matter in what shape. If it's in a good shape, you get more money. If it's in a bad shape, you will get the refund. And we think that's a good way to do things because this changes the market completely. People care for their devices. People really refund their devices. Actually, there have only been 2 Shift phones in the whole life of Shift company. 7 years, only 2 phones have been thrown away. All other phones are still running or have been returned to us. And I think that is an amazing number compared to other things we find in the market right now. So better put a refund on it. Otherwise, you will not get it back. That's my experience. And also people will not care where to put it. Maybe also when they put it in a Dropbox, there are collection points for smartphones. Okay, great. But how are they being recycled? It's also the question, how is the quality of recycling being done? And what do you know about your materials when you get it back? We have built this phone and we know everything about this phone. We know every part of this phone, every material, and we know how to get it out, how we want it back, and how we can reuse it ourselves and not just any other manufacturer who doesn't care about it, maybe. Okay, so we want to get all the materials back of our phones. And I think that's what it should be like. Maybe here's a little overview. 2 years warranty is normal, like was mostly, some even have 1 year, but we for sure have 2 years on everything. 5 years warranty for the repairs. So you are always sure up to 5 years, we will repair your device and you will get it repaired and you will get the things. Of course, even way longer. We have now devices that are 7 years old and they are still being repaired. We still have the spare parts. So it will be way longer, but this is what we promise you and what is the warranty. Lifetime upgrade warranty. So you can upgrade your device anytime you want for your lifetime. So even after 50 years or even 100 years, our company will exist for a long time because you can't buy it, you can't destroy it, and we are not doing risk things. So the company is set on eternity for existence. So independent of markets, independent of other things, I don't know, maybe if the world ends, of course, we also will end. Maybe some wars could be a critical thing. But, we really care about this to be there for a long time because we also want to warrant that for our users. What does it help if we build a risky startup and we promise people, well, you can return your thing after 10 years and then we are broken and we are not existent anymore in 5 years or so, okay? Or we are bought by some company and they then decide, oh, well, no, this is not interesting for us, and we stop that. It's not, you can't promise anything like this then. So our shares of the company cannot be bought, they cannot be inherited. So the people working at Shift always have to have that Shift heart, and they can only become leading position in Shift when they have been here for minimum 7 years. And we found that they are really, really caring for things and have this heart that you need to run a company like that. Lifetime return warranty, so you can return the 22 euros refund you will always get, even if you return it after a few hundred years. Well, that's the next generation to care for that, but we will make sure the funds are there. Now you will ask about, well, how about then the price of a device? And this is the good news. We also want to make it affordable because we think our sustainable technologies should also be affordable. And we not only have one product, we have lots of products. So that's maybe also a little difference between Fairphone and us. We always have different smartphone sizes. So you can choose between a bigger screen, smaller screen, how much you want to pay. You have a little variety of things you want to buy. And also it's more products. I will talk about this a little later. So we also build other products, so you can also upgrade to other products. You can return a phone and get a laptop or get something else. This is the new price, and this is really the best we could do. And with this, we have 30% margin. This is how we calculate prices. We could get the margin better because people have given us money, so we could do bigger productions. And this way we could be more efficient. And so the price could drop from 444 euros to 333 euros for our starting model. So here, maybe you want to take a screenshot of this. This is our cycles. You can look at it a little longer because the time has kind of run out, but I wanted to talk about those things in depth because it's the little details that really change things. You can say easily a thing like, we want to do good, but then if you don't care about all the details in all the cycles, you can't make it happen, or they will not become reality. You will get into a lot of problems if you try to do so. So here are our 13 Res, our cycles, how we take decisions, how we build things, how we do things. I could talk for hours now about this because every Re that we see here has a lot of thought into it, a lot of love put into it. But you will get the idea if you look at the Res roughly, and I've talked about some of the things already, so maybe I just skip this for now because I want to talk about one other thing before I end my talk. You can ask questions because that's really important to us. Well, this is the next, our detachable notebook. You can think of it as a Microsoft Surface, but it's fully repairable and modular, and it comes out this year, and it's amazing. I'm really looking forward to this product myself, and I have the prototypes here, and they are really promising, and I already love this product a lot. It has been, actually, we built the products that we want to have ourselves. That's the good thing about it. So we are missing products on this market, and then we decide to build them with as much care and love as we can, and to do the products as good as possible in regards of the environment, people, and also the design. We love design. We are both designers, the founders of the company, where I'm a communication designer and product designer. My brother is also a designer, so we have a very high design part in our company. So the thing I want to talk about is this. The last point is universal computing. And this is the next big step in our eyes, and it will take 1 minute to explain that. You will not buy a smartphone or a tablet or another product in the future anymore. You will buy one universal computing device, which in our case, the first universal computing device will be a phone in our case. And this one will then connect with all the other things and give you the experience of having a tablet, having a desktop, having mixed reality glasses, or whatever you want to have. Any experience you want, you will get. But it's one technology. You don't need mobile OS, mobile apps, and desktop versions. You don't need to share your things via the cloud. The cloud eats a lot of energy, and there are so many more efficient ways to build the future and to build things. So we've thought a lot about how we want the future to be built, and we are building that. We have been developing it for years already now, and it's coming out sometime soon. We are just waiting for a few more things to happen. And then you will be able to use universal computing devices, which will totally change the game, totally change how we build the devices. They will cut down electronic waste more than 70% in that area for electronic devices. And maybe I'll end with this statement. And I'm open for questions. You can ask me anything you want. We are very open with things.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carsten. Perhaps I could ask a few questions that are arising from the chat, a bit about from policy aspect as well. What do you think about any further actions regarding due diligence, for example, and a particular participant mentioned Xinjiang in China and the Uyghur speaking area.
Yeah.
As a second question, someone asks regarding the access to responsible raw materials, whether you would be able to associate with other companies having the same vision in order to increase the bargaining power and to get access to better responsible non-conflict area materials.
Yes, of course. Maybe I start with the second question because it's easier and more fast to answer. Yes, we are open to cooperate. It's very, very important to work together in that regard. So this is the best we can do. Sharing and opening up our supply chain and working together with others, because this will help more than we can do ourselves. Because, as I said, our amount of materials we buy is quite small, and we are very happy and open to share, even with big companies. We love to be copied too, like everybody's allowed to copy our technologies. They're open. So if Apple wants to copy our modular design, no problem. They are allowed to do that. They will not get any problem with us. We would be happy to do so because we want to share. We want to do good, right? So if we really want to optimize that, what good is it if we keep things to us? We can scale and grow much faster in that regard to do good together if we share it with others. The best would be to share it with other companies who are also totally purpose economies. So not built on, the money and power value system like they have been before, but already the new system, which in our eyes is purpose economy. You can look up purposeeconomy.org to get some more information about it. It's a totally different way of running a company. And of course, we are very open for all purpose companies to share things, and on commercial companies in that regard who want to keep profit for themselves, we would like to talk with them about some other values first, because that's quite important to us too. The other question, what was it again? Can you repeat it for me? You're muted, sorry.
Sorry about that. So again, more from a policy point of view, what do you think could be done further regarding due diligence?
Yeah, so policy in that regard, I think it's way more important if I now talk to people from the EU or from our German government. I'm not a big friend of, prohibiting things, okay? You can, of course, do that, but that way you will also change the way how markets internationally work together and make it harder. Like if Germany prohibits things, German manufacturers have it way harder than other manufacturers in other countries, or the EU prohibits things for the EU, for things to be sold, yes, but for things to be manufactured, I think it should be fair worldwide. But what you really should do, I think it's good for, hazardous things or really big problems to prohibit that, yes. But on other things, I think it's way more important to show things, to share this with customers. So having a label, having a passport for a product, I think is a very good idea. and showing how much energy it consumes. We have that in many products already, but how repairable is it? How good is this company doing? Would also be interesting for me to know. How durable is it? How good is the support, for example? Those are all things people should know when they buy a product. And in some ways now, buying a product is manipulative. Like they only see a little part of the truth, and the other part of the truth is not visible. And I think it's always good to be transparent. And I think this is where the EU should hop in and should show to help for making things transparent to people so they know what they are buying. They should know if a product is not well supported, or if it's not good to repair, or it creates a lot of waste, and this company doesn't care a lot about this planet. I think people should know that, at least. Maybe you shouldn't prohibit it, but it should be visible, and there should be a label. And I think it's good what France is doing right now with the repairability label. I'm a little sad that EU takes much longer time before a repairability label will be there. Yeah.
Thanks, Carsten. So I see that we have a few minutes left, and I know that perhaps Stefan, you had some reactions to some of the earlier questions. I wonder whether I could pass the floor back to you and then back to our other speakers as well for final comments, just maybe 1 or 2 minutes each if possible.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I could not keep up with all the good questions in the chat. So first, I want to apologize if I could not spot on time that my screen was not full presentation. So sorry for that. The slide will be shared. I mean, hopefully, I would say DigiConnect will share with the participant, and everything should be made available. So that's for the very logistical question. There was a question on a very technical question. For example, in the digitalization world, some components are made for specific use, and it's a real challenge to reuse them. I think in my presentation, I identified this challenge with, for example, can we reuse a motherboard? Can we reuse a CPU? Which is quite difficult. So I'm not a digital devices engineer, so maybe, for example, Carsten could address this question, but I think here there is a very, very good point about finding the balance between something that can be integrated, minimized, and maybe a design that will integrate, you know, like elementary function, and then can be combined and recombined more easily. But I think this is a great question, because this is probably the most difficult technical challenge for a long sustainable modularity. And then there was another question, I think maybe one where about the Commission and how we can help or make sure that the Commission, I would say, deliver proposal reflecting the ambition they have identified. And this is something we are really keen on to collaborate with anyone, because I think really all the reports we have tend to show that delays, non-action will cost us more than acting today. This is completely obvious. So one suggestion is, can we integrate in the impact assessment we do the full societal cost of the different policy option we consider? For example, this is a request we have for changing and improving the methodology of eco-design. Can we integrate societal cost in the identification of the improvement that should be made to place a product on your market? Because we think that will unleash a lot of ambition. But I think at the end of the day, better you're aware that it's a question of influence, and it's a question of creating enough influencing power so that the decision can be taken at the level of the emergency we have to face, rather than being kind of watered down because we are scared for industry, or because we've got a kind of job blackmail, because that's very often the case. This being said, I think the Commission needs to be helped by national government. This is essential, notably as national government have the competency on, social policy. And it is very clear that one of the barriers to the highest ambition is always what's going to happen for those who may not be able to access, the most sustainable solution. And I think as long as the national policy do not contribute to integrate the distributional effect of sustainable policy, and not by saying the poorest should get to the crappiest solution, because I'm sorry, this is the solution that have been suggested today, that we need to maintain energy guzzling in appliance or devices on the market because they are affordable for the poorest. This is only enlarging the poverty gap. I think we need to be more brave than this and combine an ambition for product at EU level with an ambition on distribution policy at national level to really ensure a sustainable and fair economy. But I know it's easier said than done, but let's work together in that direction.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Stefan. Maybe I can just direct to Pascal if you have any final comments to make.
Yes, we have talked about eco-design and the design of products in general, but one thing that has not been, let's say, talked about in this session today is the role of citizens and of consumers, because in the past so many years we have made huge progress in recycling technologies, for example, and infrastructure. There are many more collection points than there used to be, of course, especially in Europe. But one thing that remains a huge problem is to convince or to get people to return their older devices. As I showed in my slides, 1 out of 7 devices in the homes of people are broken or not used. And so the challenge is, and it's really an issue of great concern, is how do we get consumers to return their appliances broken? And so we have also the dimension of behavioral change. How can we nudge people to do something that would be good for the environment?
Absolutely, and users need to have the confidence in the data that's stored in those phones when they then pass them on for reuse. And perhaps, Carsten, do you have just a 1-minute final comment to make, if possible?
Sure. There have been a few things dropping up now, also in the comments. So one thing is users' behavior. Of course, I talked about it. And we are working really close with the customers. We know every customer of a Shift phone, and we talk with them. And as I said, the behavior has totally changed. Like, we have this refund system, and the problem is solved, actually. Like, it is solved in our case. And I think this is important, that the manufacturer takes responsibility, not just for selling the product, but for keeping the relationship with the customer. For us, when we sell a product, it's not, it is sold and that's it. It is the beginning of a long-term relationship with the user. The relationship is more important to us than the selling of the product. And I think this is how you should think. And then things turn around. And then you look how this relationship should be. And there's a big thing I should maybe mention, because maybe we will be launching something this year. It is called the Shifter Network. And this will totally change the market.
We really need to wrap up. I'm sorry to interrupt you, because I think that our time's come to an end. Sorry about that. Just wanted to say thank you to everyone very much for listening in today, and for everyone's interaction in the chat as well. I would like to welcome everyone back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for the 6th session of the Connect University Summer School, which will be on the net climate impact of digitalization.
Is there a chance to answer questions for people further? Because there are more questions, I can answer them.
Andrea, would you happen to have the answer to that?
Yeah, sure.
Because
The speakers can, of course, feel free to go on Slido and to reply to the questions that are left unanswered.
okay, then I will do that. Thanks.
And thanks
Thank you
again
very
to
much.
everyone.
Have a nice afternoon.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.